quiet coup inside Iran? Internal factions reportedly seek to oust the new supreme leader and the president. Donald Trump continues weighing new strikes on Iran. IRGC warships open fire near Oman. U.S. moves to cut Iraq-based cash flows, tightening pressure on Iran. China selling satellite technology to Russia? China conducts exercises simulating the tactical encirclement of U.S. and allied forces in the Western Pacific. While the world watches the Strait of Hormuz, where U.S. and Iranian naval forces remain locked in a daily standoff, a separate power struggle may already be unfolding inside Tehran. No gunfire, no tanks in the streets, yet enough to reshape Iran's future within weeks. A quiet coup inside Iran? Internal factions reportedly seek to oust the new supreme leader and the president. A covert power play inside Tehran is reportedly isolating Iran's supreme leader while pushing the president to the sidelines. A silent transfer of authority appears to be underway at the core of the Iranian state, raising the possibility that both current supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei and the president could be effectively neutralized in the near term. As global attention remains fixed on the Middle East's most volatile conflict zone, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is reportedly moving behind the scenes to sever direct communications between the president and the supreme leader, while consolidating decision-making channels under a military council. The civilian government is increasingly marginalized, while real authority appears to be shifting into military hands. According to a report released Tuesday by Iran International, the Revolutionary Guard continues tightening its grip domestically. The IRGC is said to have blocked several personnel appointments proposed by President Masoud Pezeshkian, while establishing a strict security cordon around the residence of Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei, preventing the president from gaining direct access. The report cites an exclusive source claiming that a military council composed of senior officers now holds de facto control over Iran's top leadership structure, while also intercepting government reports before they reach the supreme leader. That situation has reportedly pushed President Pezeshkian into political paralysis, severely weakening his authority as the Revolutionary Guard gradually assumes functions traditionally held by the state. The report further claims Pezeshkian repeatedly requested an emergency meeting with the supreme leader, but each request was denied. Instead, direct communication channels between the civilian government and the supreme leader were reportedly cut off through layered security measures. Many analysts argue this is not a sudden development, but the culmination of years of Revolutionary Guard expansion. Behnam Ben Taleblu told Fox News that the issue is no longer whether it will happen, but when. In his assessment, the IRGC has steadily expanded its influence for more than 3 decades. The current power restructuring follows a major U.S. military campaign against Iran in late February. In this scenario, the United States and Israel were reportedly linked to the deaths of former Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei and several senior officials. In early March, Iran's Assembly of Experts quickly elevated his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, as the new supreme leader. Since assuming power, however, Mojtaba has rarely appeared in public, issuing only written statements or speaking through spokespersons. That has fueled growing questions over both his health and his actual command authority. Fox News, citing Israeli security sources, reported that he may now serve as little more than a symbolic figurehead, while Iran's power apparatus becomes increasingly fragmented, chaotic, and nearing paralysis. Against that backdrop, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, moved quickly to fill the power vacuum. Its influence is now widely believed to exceed that of both the presidency and parliament, particularly under wartime conditions. The new IRGC commander, Ahmad Vahidi, is viewed by many analysts as one of the men exercising real authority inside Iran. He is reported to maintain direct access to Mojtaba Khamenei while playing a central role in military and political decision-making. Some experts warn that Vahidi's rise could harden Tehran's posture and further complicate ceasefire negotiations. Meanwhile, Iran's economy continues to absorb severe shocks from war, sanctions, and the U.S. naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, which has reportedly brought oil exports close to a standstill. Internal factional conflict is adding to the instability. In Washington, the Donald Trump administration continues pursuing a maximum pressure strategy through military reinforcement and intensified economic restrictions, while simultaneously pushing diplomatic channels, including outreach through channels involving Pakistan. Many analysts, however, argue that President Masoud Pezeshkian is not the final decision-maker on war or peace. Real authority, they contend, rests with the IRGC hardline bloc. Fox News cited experts who described the situation not as an overt coup, but as a wartime transfer of power toward the military establishment. That shift also raises fresh doubts about Tehran's willingness to negotiate, since hardliners could block any agreement viewed as a concession. For years, the IRGC has operated far beyond the role of a conventional military force. It controls major sectors of the economy, oversees missile and nuclear programs, and exerts deep influence across the state apparatus. The latest developments suggest the IRGC is no longer operating from the shadows. It is emerging openly as Tehran's new center of power. While power inside Tehran appears increasingly unstable, external pressure is also rising rapidly. Iran is facing a mounting financial crisis, with reports that military and police personnel are experiencing delayed pay. On Tuesday, Donald Trump stated that Iran is losing roughly $500 million per day amid escalating tensions in the Strait of Hormuz. He argued that Tehran is eager to reopen the waterway because financial pressure is becoming increasingly severe. On Truth Social, Trump wrote that Iran is facing a serious cash shortage, while members of its military and police forces are complaining about unpaid salaries. Trump also revealed that several days earlier, advisors told him Iran wanted the strait reopened immediately. However, he reportedly concluded that if Washington eased pressure too soon, it would be difficult to secure a meaningful agreement. Even while extending the ceasefire, he continued directing the U.S. Navy to maintain pressure on key maritime routes. That effectively means Iran's oil revenue remains under sustained pressure, further weakening Tehran's ability to endure a prolonged standoff. If the blockade continues and storage facilities begin to fill, Iran could be forced to cut production or temporarily shut down operations at multiple oil fields, not because it lacks buyers, but because it runs out of storage capacity. Once production is halted, restarting output can be costly and technically difficult, potentially delivering a severe blow to the national economy. Unlike earlier sanctions periods, when Tehran still had limited avenues for covert oil sales, Washington is now believed to be combining naval and financial pressure to constrict nearly all remaining export channels. This is no longer a short-term pressure campaign. It has become a slow, grinding war of attrition. If oil cannot leave Iran, the issue moves beyond military confrontation and into regime survival. While sustaining pressure abroad, the Trump administration is also weighing an extension of waivers under the Jones Act to allow foreign-flagged vessels to transport fuel between U.S. domestic ports, an effort aimed at easing energy prices at home as the Middle East crisis drives market volatility. Even so, many observers assess that if negotiations collapse, renewed U.S. airstrikes on Iran remain on the table. Parallel to the economic pressure campaign, the White House is also preserving the military option as a strategic fallback. According to the Wall Street Journal on Tuesday, Donald Trump recently consulted senior aides on the possibility of launching another round of airstrikes against Iran before deciding to continue a sustained pressure strategy against Tehran. Officials in the Trump administration reportedly said Washington is prepared to wait, arguing that the maximum pressure campaign proved effective during Trump's first term and could do so again. According to those sources, the White House has now chosen an intermediate course: sustain pressure indefinitely until Iran presents a concrete proposal. At that point, Trump would decide whether to continue negotiations or authorize a new strike package. From Tehran's side, Iran's ambassador to the United Nations, Amir Saeed Iravani, stated on April 21st that talks with the United States and Pakistan could resume if Washington ends its blockade of Iranian ports. Asked about the risk of renewed escalation after the ceasefire expires, he said Iran is prepared for both scenarios. If conflict resumes, Tehran is ready, but it still wants to leave room for diplomacy. Meanwhile, maritime tensions continue to rise. The UK Maritime Trade Operations, UKMTO, reported Wednesday that a container vessel was fired upon by warships of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, in waters northeast of Oman, causing heavy damage to the vessel's bridge area. According to the report, the Iranian warship approached without issuing prior warnings over VHF radio before opening fire while the ship was operating roughly 15 nautical miles off the Omani coast. No fires, explosions, or casualties were reported, and all crew members were safe. UK MTO advised commercial vessels in the area to report any unusual activity immediately. Iran later stated that its naval forces were merely enforcing maritime law against a container vessel that had repeatedly ignored warnings. Even so, the incident underscores that the strait and surrounding waters remain a flashpoint capable of triggering a wider crisis at any moment. U.S. moves to cut cash flows through Iraq, tightening pressure on Iran. According to the Wall Street Journal, the Trump administration has paused U.S. dollar transfers to Iraq and frozen portions of bilateral security cooperation in an effort to pressure Baghdad into dismantling Iran-backed militias. U.S. Treasury officials are also reportedly blocking nearly $500 million in Iraqi oil revenue cash reserves held in accounts at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Collectively, Washington appears to be executing a two-axis pressure strategy. Maintain the threat of direct military force against Iran, while simultaneously degrading the financial resources of Tehran's regional proxy network. It is a form of coercion that avoids immediate full-scale war, yet still steadily erodes Iranian leverage across multiple fronts. Wall Street Journal sources added that Washington has informed Iraq that funding for certain counterterrorism and military training programs will remain suspended until militia attacks stop and Baghdad takes concrete steps to disband armed groups aligned with Tehran. That signals the White House is no longer applying pressure solely to Iran itself, but to the broader architecture of Iranian regional influence. While Washington increases unilateral pressure, Western allies are beginning to prepare for the post-crisis phase. In London, military planners from more than 30 countries met over 2 days to advance plans for reopening the Strait of Hormuz and establishing a long-term maritime security framework. The British government stated that more than 10 countries have expressed willingness to join a future international mission led by the United Kingdom and France when conditions permit. Discussions focused on force capability, command and control structures, and deployment options into the region. The UK Ministry of Defence said the current objective is to convert diplomatic consensus into an operational plan. That plan would protect freedom of navigation and support a durable ceasefire. Operationally, that suggests Western allies are seeking to rebuild a collective security architecture in the Middle East after an initial phase dominated by unilateral U.S. action. In Europe, Dutch military intelligence has warned that China is assisting Russia in the space technology sector. According to the annual report of the MIVD, Chinese companies are selling satellite imagery and space-related data to Russia while concealing the cooperation to avoid Western sanctions. The report assessed that Moscow is suffering reduced satellite reconnaissance capacity due to shortages of components, technical personnel, and sanctions pressure, forcing it to seek outside support from China. The head of MIVD added that drone components are also being transferred from China to Russia. In return, Beijing is reportedly seeking battlefield lessons from the war in Ukraine, experience the Chinese military has not acquired firsthand. According to the Dutch assessment, Beijing continues to project neutrality publicly, while in practice steadily deepening military cooperation with Moscow. While the Middle East continues to heat up over the US-Iran confrontation, another power front in Asia is also escalating rapidly. China conducts exercises simulating the tactical encirclement of US and allied forces in the Western Pacific. China's latest naval movements indicate that Beijing is not merely reacting to a Japanese destroyer transiting the Taiwan Strait, but pursuing a broader regional military strategy. Following that event, China launched major exercises in the East China Sea, while dispatching Naval Task Group 133 into the Western Pacific to strengthen long-range expeditionary capabilities. Notably, the aircraft carrier Liaoning also moved southward, signaling potential cross-theater coordination among Chinese naval forces. These military steps unfolded alongside hardline diplomatic messaging. Beijing reiterated that Taiwan remains a non-negotiable red line, while accusing Japan of provocative behavior. Chinese state media further alleged that Tokyo deliberately chose a sensitive moment to intensify bilateral tensions. The larger significance, however, lies in the regional battle space. On April 20th, the United States and Philippines launched the large-scale Balikatan exercise, with deeper participation from Japan. The drills include live-fire events, maritime maneuvers, and control of strategic sea lanes near the Taiwan Strait. In response, China appears to be deploying forces in a tactical encirclement posture, Task Group 133 operating near the Philippine Sea, while the Liaoning Carrier Group maintains a southern axis of presence. Operationally, this suggests Beijing is testing anti-access and intervention denial scenarios aimed at slowing or complicating U.S. and allied military entry into the theater. These activities are also taking place ahead of a possible meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, giving Beijing an incentive to demonstrate strength rather than enter talks from a perceived weak position. At the same time, China may be probing Washington's response threshold, while U.S. resources remain partially tied down in the Middle East. For Taiwan, while not yet the direct target, these maneuvers still raise risks to maritime traffic and the broader security environment around the island. Collectively, Beijing appears to be combining military signaling with diplomatic calculation to shape the strategic balance across the Indo-Pacific. From Tehran to the Strait of Hormuz, from Iraq to Taiwan, developments that appear disconnected may actually point to a larger picture. The world is entering a period of increasingly direct great power competition, where conflict is no longer shaped by bombs alone, but by blockades, economics, internal political struggles, and multi-directional military pressure. Iran may be fracturing from within, the United States continues tightening the outer ring, and China is simultaneously attempting to shape a new balance in Asia. The central question is whether these are isolated crises or the opening signals of a new global order now taking shape. Can Iran withstand simultaneous pressure from inside and outside? And where will the next flashpoint emerge first? Leave your view in the comments below. If you found this analysis useful, follow the channel for the latest developments and deeper breakdowns of the world's major strategic shifts.